I'm going to mastermind more consistently, and I'm going to record it, and I'm going to put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, and
way ahead of your time.
I mean,
way ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Get attitude means, how can I proactively change the way I think? How can I proactively increase my life? How can I proactively create better relationships and better work situations for me to enjoy it? And welcome everybody to the GAP, the Get Attitude Podcast, The Gap, bridging the gap from who you are to who you want to become and from where you are to where you want to go. My name is Glenn Bill, founder of the University of Attitude, keynote speaker and author of the international best-selling book, The ABCs of Attitude. I've been fortunate enough to help tens of thousands of people get attitude. Attitude, the secret formula to success in your business and in your life. And this podcast will help you get yours. So let's get some. I want to welcome everybody. Please remember to subscribe, to rate and review, and most importantly, to share our podcast. Today, we are with one of the leading industry influencers in the mortgage business, the one, the only, the founder, the CEO of MortgageCoach, Dave Savage. Dave, welcome to the Get Attitude Podcast.
It's good to be here, Glenn. I always love talking to you, brother. I'm fired up.
All right. I've been fortunate to be a guest on Dave's show, so we're reversing the roles. And Dave is a master interviewer and has really been ahead of the curve when it comes to video interviews and building business. This month's attitude message, we're focusing on do more than you're paid for. Attitude booster, attitude number 4. And when I think about influencers and leaders in the business world, especially in the mortgage world, I think of Dave Savage. I've learned from Dave. I've learned from Dave's guests. As I said, he was really a pioneer in this podcast. You were podcasting before anybody even knew it was podcasting. And I've always felt like when it comes to doing more than you're paid for, Dave Savage is the perfect example. Always giving, always delivering, always giving, and then building what we know now as MortgageCoach. So Dave, welcome. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about MortgageCoach, about how it started from that very first person who set up at the beginning of the bridge, and now with all your work, with you doing more than you're paid for, what does that community look like from the first loan originator you had to where you are? Would love to hear that story.
All right, so let's do a little bit of the startup story. So, I mean, my big epiphany as a salesperson is when I learned with just total clarity that if you just surpass people's expectations, you wow them, you win. And so a lot of people don't know this, but the name of the company is not MortgageCoach. The name of the company is Wow Tools. So MortgageCoach is a DBA of Wow Tools, and it was the first piece of technology that I created to systematically and consistently create a wow for borrowers. You know, I mean, that was my magic power. Like, I'm going to meet you. I'm going to be more present. I'm going to position myself a little differently. I'm going to ask a little different questions. And then I'm just going to net it out. Like, hey, here is how you can achieve your goals as a family who's buying real estate, how you're going to build wealth with real estate. Boom. And so it's just a combination of that. And so Wow Tools is the name of the company. I created it to create systematic, consistent wows at scale for mortgage professionals. I launched it on the stage of Sales Mastery in 1996, I think. Yeah, 1996. So I've been at it for a while.
Yeah.
And I was a speaker telling my story as a loan officer because I was a top producer once upon a time. And Todd let me sell it. He let me tell people, hey, this is what I do and how I do it. And I use this thing called MortgageCoach. And I sold it for $995. And I had 117 people follow me off stage and buy it. And so that was the birth of MortgageCoach, you know, in fall of either 96 or 97. So that's the startup story, you know, and to me, it's all about wowing people.
That's fantastic. And so we go from 117 people that started the community. What is that number now? How many people are in the Mortgage Coach community using the total cost analysis and all the wonderful things that you provide?
Well, we've got, a few different tools. We've got, the total cost analysis. We have our Rate Watch app. I mean, the total, like just say subscribers to the technology is over 15,000.
Wow.
And then the extended community, in our Facebook group, in our YouTube channel, in LinkedIn, I don't know if it's quite 40,000, but I know it's over 35,000 loan officers, mortgage professionals tune in to our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, and use this as a place to get content, get inspiration, and get ideas.
And they use you as a resource. And so that's really, when I think about value, adding value, giving more value, you have your sales, you have your product, but what it really comes down to is you are the number one resource for a hell of a lot of people in America that are in the mortgage loan industry. And that's the advantage. And so the people that are listening to this who may be business owners, you may even be a corporate person. You may be somebody wanting to start a business. What we're hoping to do with this podcast with Dave is to help give you an insight of how just one man started this thing 24 years ago and turned this into a community and into a movement. So Dave, with that, what I'd love to do is just get your opinion on attitude. What is your definition of attitude? When you think of attitude, what does that mean to you? And maybe who are some of your teachers on attitude that really influenced you when it comes to the field of attitude?
Well, I mean, as a salesperson, as a leader, I think, my number one tool and asset is my attitude, and some of that is how you project, how excited you are about life. I mean, I don't know how much of it is just genes. I was born with this. I've always got up early in the morning. I was that little kid that wanted to run out the door and knock on people's door before they were up. And my mom had to throttle me. But I've always been, just a gift of curiosity and gratefulness, and a little louder than the average human being.
Sure.
But, to me, the definition of attitude is just someone that makes other people happy, someone that makes other people more pumped, more hopeful, someone that has energy that's attractive. And as I get older, I'm over 50 now, I'm 55. I have to be a little more intentional about that. Like, my energy levels aren't just,
what they used to be.
They're lower at the end of the day. They're
Right.
Still bright and heavy in the morning, but I run out of gas a little earlier. I have to be more thoughtful, but it's just that. It's your energy, it's what you bring to a conversation in every way.
And then when you think about your energy, when you think about the intention that you're talking about, what do you do to maintain a good attitude, Dave? Or are there tricks that do you trick yourself into it? How do you keep your energy levels up? Or is it, like you said, just in your DNA? What do you do to stay sharp?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do think some of it is just who I am and how I roll. But I am very serious about my sleep. I do get up very early, but I go to bed early, and I do personally don't prefer to get woken up by a alarm, but it's pretty rare that I get up after 5 in the morning. I get up between 4 and 5, and I go to bed at a time that makes that natural.
Right.
I always think that's important. And then I've just always, and I don't know if this is a gift or this is dwelled into me, but I don't take a lot of things personally. Whether
Cool.
people are doing good things to me or bad things to me, I don't take it personally. I mean, one of my all-time favorite books is The 4 Agreements. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Be impeccable with your word and do your best. And I think when I read that book, it was like, oh my God, this is it. But I was like, I kind of already did all those things naturally.
Sure.
And so, those, I'd say just good sleep and have a good conversation with yourself that gives you energy. It makes you an attractive person to be around.
When you talk about sleep, they say the number one anti-aging remedy is sleep, right? And so I think when you think about attitude, when you think about being positive, when you think about having the energy, I think if you're listening to this podcast, one thing you really need to analyze is, what is my sleep pattern, and is it varied? Is it off the board? Am I not getting sleep? I think it's as simple as it sounds, Dave. It's extremely good advice. When we talk about your influences, people who taught you how to give more than you receive, people, you mentioned Todd Duncan. Obviously, Todd, a major influencer in the mortgage space. Obviously, with what he did, attitude booster #1, being nice. We went into being nice with 4 other guests, and one of the things that kept going on is, who are you helping, who are you serving, who are you raising up? But I'd love to know some of the mentors who are in your life, either personally or professionally, that have helped shape your attitude.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot, but one of my first business mentor was Mel Samick, and he brought me into the mortgage business, and he gave me such an extraordinary gift. I did not do well in high school. I mean, I think I made it through high school as a football player and athlete. I don't even know if I would have graduated if I just didn't want to be eligible to play sports. Well, that's not true. My dad and my parents would have made sure, but it would have been a lot more friction.
I resemble that remark. Trust me. Sports. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't do well because I'm ADD and I'm dyslexic. I mean, I'm the kid that took Ritalin in school. And so Mel gave me a gift that I'll just never forget. And I remember when he hired me, I had to show up to his house and we would listen to, I don't know if it was Zig Ziglar or Tommy Hopkins, but we listened to these discs. No, not discs, cassette.
Right.
And it was like my first introduction into a book and content that I could consume without, struggling to read.
Awesome.
And I got 2 gifts. One, I learned to consume content in a way that, given my challenges with reading and being dyslexic, was easy, relaxing, and awesome. And then I also really got addicted to just growing and learning, and just consumed every book I could. And I do read books now. I mean, I did start reading because it really oh my God, I can get stuff out of this. I'm not just doing it to get tested from a high school teacher.
Sure.
I'm doing it so I can be more successful. So, Mel was my first mentor, and that was a gift I'll always be grateful for.
And I'm guessing you were just a young loan originator starting out, and you got a hold of Zig. Man, I'll never forget the first time you heard Zig and the Masters of Speaking, right? And you're like, oh my God, it's for us ADD self-improvement nuts. And it's like, I found my people. What was the message, Zig? Do you remember any overriding message that you live by with Zig, or do you have a mantra, Dave, or anything like that goes through your head?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the most powerful mentor earlier, that, let's say, author, was Tony Robbins.
Right.
And I've done the fire walk multiple times. But my takeaway from him is just the most important words that you use and the most important conversations you have are the conversations you have with yourself.
Sure.
It's neurolinguistics. And so, and just the belief that you can change anything you want about yourself. From that 25-year-old kid to, the changes I made in myself, the way I learned to be strategic about the conversations I was having, absolutely a gift that I got at a good age at the right time that I use every day of my life.
Yeah, that's cool. When you were just talking about being a loan originator, I'm sure we have people that are starting, but whether they're realtors, whether they're loan originators, whether they're copier salesmen, whatever. Do you remember being the first year loan originator? And then you mentioned that you became one of the top loan originators in your marketplace. Talk to me a little bit about how you bridged the gap from walking in not knowing what a loan app was to becoming this rock star loan originator that made things happen. What was the process? What was the mentality? What were some of the attitude lessons as you bridged the gap from who you were to who you wanted to become? If you can take yourself back there.
Yeah. No, I always had a hard work ethic. I mean, I was just raised in a family where work ethic was everything. That's how we defined ourselves. No one is going to outwork the savages at anything.
Right.
Whether you're pulling weeds in the backyard, we're competing on who's pulling the most weeds,
With a last name like that, I would guess that that's kind of, It's the best
Yeah.
last name in America, Jason. Am I wrong? I'm like, oh my God.
You were not wrong.
Yeah, it is so cool. All right, so go ahead. Yes, keep going.
So yeah, so a fierce pride in hard work, a game that love to compete. And so if there's someone that I'm competing with, I'm getting after it. I want to beat that guy, beat that girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was the drive, was competition. And then, just getting after it, making phone calls and again, not taking it personally. When someone is rude to you, that's on them,
Right.
and you're going to have to deal with some rude people to get to some good people. So I think early on in my career, it was just, I don't like the term faking it till you make it. Although I did. And I do find that is something that not enough young people do. And that the young people, that are, let's call it new at anything, that just are fearless. They work hard. They don't take rejection personally. I don't find too many of those folks that fail. Those are the folks that kill it in their first year.
Yeah,
or first couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that the lesson is simple, man. You work through learning. And like a typical ADD dyslexic kid, right? I was the same way. I had trouble learning. I would read something and I wouldn't understand it, but you know what? I would just keep grinding and working, and nobody else would. And that is an attitude, right? It's that persistent attitude. So if you're listening to this, if you have some of the same problems that Dave and I had as children, but whatever problem that you are facing, I think Dave's advice is real, and that's keep putting your face out there, keep taking the punches, and pretty soon you're going to come to the other side. So, Dave, that's awesome advice. Very simple advice, not easy to follow, but yet very good. Talk to me a little bit about your parents. I mean, you've mentioned them a few times. What was the origination of their attitude? What did your parents do, or what did your grandparents do? I'd love to hear the history of the Savages. Obviously, there had to be some hardworking people who came before you. You got a cool story about them, about where you came from?
Yeah. No, I'm really proud. I mean, my family was all, my parents met in Casper, Wyoming. One of my grandparents, Grandpa Marshall, owned a very successful restaurant. Multiple successful restaurants. Anybody out there? The Marshall Pancake House, the Chicken Coop. By the way, the hardest working dude ever. Didn't come to my wedding. I still kind of hold that against him. But he just, he was
working,
obsessed with his team and his restaurant. But it was like one of the best restaurants ever. And then my Grandpa Savage would have been the superintendent. Well, he was the superintendent of the school district, so he kind of grew up in education and was a very important man in Casper, Wyoming. I would walk around and just felt like a rock star because everybody knew Walter Savage.
Wow.
So then my dad was a aerospace executive. Graduated from DU, got his master's degree from DU, and yeah, he was a positive and negative. He worked in corporate life, and he really made me want to not be in corporate life,
cool.
Be an entrepreneur, because he had some disappointments with some, raises that he got, and he was an alcoholic. Most proud of thing I am with my dad is that he became a leader in the AA community for like 18 years.
That's
and
cool.
Overcame that challenge, but he was I lost my dad a year ago, but he is, influenced me in many, many positive ways that I wouldn't be who I am in a positive sense without the lessons I learned, both positive and negative, from my dad.
Yeah, AA community, unbelievable. I'm not so sure they shouldn't be teaching AA in high schools. I mean, the content there is just unbelievable. So kudos for that acknowledgement, and thanks for sharing. That's pretty big. One thing we always like to ask is, do you remember the first time you were encouraged? And do you remember the first time where you were taught enthusiasm? Do you have an example or a story that comes down? And you maybe have already said it in your father's story. He encouraged me not to be, my father was the same way. Don't be corporate, man. Do your own thing. But I always love, sometimes we get gold out of the first time you were encouraged or the first time you felt or understood the power of enthusiasm.
Well, I don't remember the actual first interaction, but I know it was between my 7th and 8th grade year, and I was not a popular kid. I mean, I had probably more acne than the average kid, although every kid did, and I wasn't popular. And I remember just, was a good athlete. So I knew all the popular kids because I was, a great athlete, good athlete. And, but I wasn't where I wanted to be, in terms of just that kid that everyone wants to hang out with. And then I remember just how some people just, their voice, the energy, they just had these attractive personalities. I don't know the instance, but I do know over the course of that period of time, I just started being myself. I just started being that attractive personality, putting myself out a little bit more. And, by my sophomore year, I mean, I was a very, popular kid, the dude you wanted to hang out with. It was during that period, but, early on, I think I muted myself. I diluted my energy and, just hit out.
Yeah, that's great.
I can't remember the exact action, but I do remember that's kind of where I started being me.
Yeah, and I think, again, for the people that are listening to us, are you muting yourself? Are you holding yourself inside of yourself? People come to the Get Attitude podcast because, you know what, they're in a rut. I heard a great thing. The difference between a rut and a grave is just the dimensions. And, hey, we got a lot of positive people, a lot of self-development people on the Get Attitude podcast, but we also know that there's people out there that are listening, that are hurting, that feel stuck, that are at the beginning of the bridge, that are trying to figure out how to bridge that gap. So I think that's really good. Last question before our break, Dave. Can you tell us about maybe the biggest time of adversity in your life that you've overcome and how that happened for you? What was your mentality? What was your biggest challenge or your biggest time of decision making where you said, "Holy shit, I got to do something"? What's that story and what was your mentality and attitude through that?
So I had a couple, and they were all business related, and where the market changed. And I'll just call out the one because I think anybody in the mortgage and real estate space knows it well, but anybody in America knows it well. But the meltdown, through 2007 and 2008 was just surreal. I had MortgageCoach and I had other businesses, and the layoffs I had to make, with people that had worked with me for years were just, gut wrenching. I mean,
Wow.
I was just sick.
Wow.
With, not being like when you're a guy that likes to win, likes to improve your business, make more money, and you're cutting back, you're making less, and you're having to let people go that you love. Those were incredible, difficult times. And that, by the way, coming out of that is what led to all the content I create on YouTube, which is another story. I won't get to that. But I do think what got me through it, like when I look back on it, is I've always consumed a lot of content because I'm ADD dyslexic. So I had wanted to, for a coping mechanism, we consume a couple hours of content a day. And I made the decision, you know what? I'm going to start still consuming because I'm always learning, but I'm going to cut that time in half and I'm going to consume and create.
Cool.
So half the time I'm going to create, half the time I'm going to consume. And that's what led to the, start of our YouTube channel, was that I would just start time blocking some of my, content. I'm like, hey, I've learned a lot. I've read a lot of books. I've achieved some business results. I'm going to just start creating, and that dedicating my consumption time, breaking it in half to where it's create and consume.
Yes.
I mean, not only did it end up being a really good business decision and create this community that we have, but it also helped me, I loved it. I was just having a ball, and it helped me in a positive way, cope through those struggling times, create content.
That's cool. And so that's the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. So if you guys want to get a hold of what Dave's doing, if you want to consume some of his content, go to that Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. It's phenomenal. You'll actually see yours truly. I'm sure I'm on there somewhere because you've interviewed me a few times.
You are, man. You go to Mortgage Coach, you could do a search, Bill, and you're in there a couple times, man. And they're very popular. Like a couple of your videos and interviews were like all-time greats.
That's awesome. Maybe we'll try to do another one of those. I want to just recount what you just said about being creative. I mean, that's the message there. In times of great distress, in times of great decision making, one of the ways to bridge the gap is to push your creativity and to tell yourself, I am a creative person and I can create. So if you're listening to this and you're stuck, and if you're at the front of the bridge and not over the bridge and you're trying to fill the gap, ask yourself the question, what am I doing to create? How am I thinking outside of the box? What answers aren't I considering and what questions aren't I asking? So Dave Savage, that's awesome, fantastic advice from one of America's top mortgage influencers. And now we are here to play Knowledge Through the Decades. Dave, we don't mean to put you on the spot here. Some of our guests have trouble, but I will help you through. And understand, we are a heavily edited program. So if things don't go well, we'll just edit that thing right out for you, bro. Dave, what we do is we ask people to go back through their lives and walk through their lives and ask and learn and share the attitude lessons they have. And of course, we always start with childbirth. Now, I know you have children. Dave has a very accomplished son who's going to be a Syracuse lacrosse player. All of our East Coast listeners, you're going to want to follow. Is it Jack Savage? What's his name?
Jack Savage. Jack Savage is going to play for Syracuse next year.
Right. They're also going to be making, that's like, he should totally be the new Jack Bauer from 24 with that name. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, and then you also have a daughter. Is that correct?
Yep, Sid Savage.
Sid.
He's working more and more with MortgageCoach, and the MortgageCoach IG channel, IGTV, is all Sid Savage.
Sweet. Very good. Well, tell them I said hey. And so if you don't remember being born, if you don't have a lesson from when you were born, maybe you think about the lesson your children taught you the day they were born. What is the attitude lesson from birth, from coming into this world?
I didn't know we were going to go to birth.
Yeah.
But I'll come up with something good on that.
Of course you will. You're that good.
Well, I think it's just the power of love. I mean, you think of a kid and just the unconditional love they have for the world, the unconditional love you have as a parent when your child is born. And, in the mortgage industry right now, we talk a lot about empathy as the superpower, but really it's just love is the superpower. If you love yourself, you love the world, it takes care of everything.
And haven't heard that one before, Dave. Great answer. And as I think about that, when you talk about the newborn baby, you're immersed in love. There's probably no time in your life that there's more love for you than the day that you're born. And as we move through life to year 100, and, old people are pissed, and I don't know that they give a lot of love. It's like how much of that love dissipates and goes away. So if you're listening today, I want you to think about how much love do you give? How much love do you get? And are you living in a space of love? And that's a big Tony Robbins, emotional need. We all want to be loved, but nobody wants to, give it. Yes, Dave.
Hey, can I don't know how fast we need to do this, but can I tell like a 2-minute story?
Absolutely. Oh, hell yes. No, we got all the time in the world, bro. Okay. I'll take you whenever I can.
Okay. So I had a flight and the guy sitting next to me, I'm going to try to make it a short story. I met the guy sitting next to me, and he ended up being the COO for In-N-Out Burger. Wow. If you're on the West Coast, you know who In-N-Out Burger is. And I met him. I got his name, and I had Wi-Fi internet, so I kind of like talking to him, and in between breaks, I Googled him, like, is he really the dude? and it was just like lawsuit after lawsuit after like every like lawsuit that In-N-Out has ever been in. His name was on it.
Yeah.
So it's like, he was the COO. And anyways, I'll tell you the 3 takeaways I had from this conversation with him. But I'm going to start with the one with love.
Love it.
Somewhere in the conversation, I integrated it like, dude, I was transparent. I Googled you and like, dude, you're dealing with all this craziness. I go, how do you, and he was really just this happiest guy. He was almost, when he first sat down next to me, he, had his headset on. And he was laughing. He was like the happiest, almost obnoxiously happy. And I go, how do you keep such a positive attitude dealing through this? And he just kind of paused for a minute. He just said, because I just love myself too much to let some of the trivial, dark stuff. Anyway, just the way he said it was cool. Just like, I'll never forget it.
Right.
One last takeaway from that exchange. the big takeaway he said that he focuses on is his people and creating a competitive culture. So if you ever go to an In-N-Out and you see the way they've designed the whole work area, it's a competitive arena. They're competing with each other. They're competing with themselves. And it's not an accident. It is like the most competitive company in how they work. So anyways, I just wanted to put a little exclamation mark on love.
That is
and that was
cool.
Just a cool story that I remind myself all the time about that.
And not to put you on the spot, you said there was 3 takeaways. So we got 2. Do you remember that third? But being 80,
yeah, it was just the investment of people. Like I asked him, like, what are your top priorities? And he goes, you know what? We got a great company. We're scaling. And I spend most of my time just developing leadership and developing servant leaders. And I had actually asked them, because like when they go through their interview process, they're looking for people that have the potential to be servant leaders, like in the In-N-Out process. And I could go on about that, but
yeah,
servant leadership, love, build a competitive work arena.
I love it.
And
all from childbirth. So, Dave, let's talk about now you're getting a little bit, you're headed into what, 3rd, 4th grade. You're 10 years old. I want you to go back to being 10, bro, and be like, what do you remember attitude lesson-wise about being 10? What did you figure out?
Well, the lesson there, and I'll be quick, guys, for anybody listening.
You're fine. We love it.
The lesson I learned, the lesson I learned as an elementary school kid is just the power of asking. I don't know if it was my dad or my grandpa that told me, you don't get what you don't ask for. But I remembered that. I was on that. I was an obnoxious person that would ask anybody anything that I wanted. And I was just, it was almost like funny. Like I'm not even going to tell some of the stories and things that I did just to, play off of that as a teenager. But you don't get what you don't ask for. If you want something, ask for it.
I love it, and I know I have a feeling that's why we're kindred spirits. I was the kid in class that never had his hand down, right? Like I would disrupt and totally take the class off of the lesson plan because I asked so many, and my classmates loved it. I became famous for that, right? They're like, Glenn, this is great. We don't even have to study because you're one-on-one with the teacher, and like nobody's learning. But the question for our gappers is, are you asking not just for things, but most of all, are you asking for help? And are you asking for help from the right people? Great 10-year lesson. Now, hey, man, you become popular. You got it. You're through high school. You're putting yourself out there. You're 20. Where the hell were you at 20? Were you in college? And what was your attitude lesson when you hit 20?
Yeah, so at 20, I think I had a little too much fun. I don't know if quite. In my 20s, I figured it out. But at 20, I don't think there's a lot of life lessons that I want to pass on to anybody, as I was just having too much fun. But really, what I learned from Mel Samick, I don't know if I was 23, 24, 25, but that consume content. You can change, at any age, whatever you want. And that, in my 20s, just learning the power of content, Tony Robbins. And it's not any one mentor. It's just like podcasts like yours, consume content and you can develop any habit you want. You pick your habits, your habit picked your life. And usually the way I've changed every bad habit or developed every great habit, it was through, consuming of content and taking action on it. And I did learn that in my 20s. Yeah. And I did take action in a massive way in my 20s.
30 years old. What happened when you were 30? Were you married yet at 30? What was going on?
Married at 27.
You got married at 27, so you were 3 years into a marriage. You're 30 years old. What was the attitude lesson? Do you remember your 30th birthday at all, Dave?
No, I do not. I do not remember our 30th birthday party. But I went from being a sales guy, gunslinging, winning on work ethic and charisma, to being a businessman. I had started my own mortgage company as in my 30s.
Hey, what was the name of it? I'm curious. What was the name of it?
Mortgage Link. Mortgage Link was the name of my first mortgage company.
Interesting. Okay.
And while I was a top producer that made a lot of top line revenue,
yes,
I did not make a lot of bottom line profits in that period of time, and I didn't make a lot of good decisions on how to manage a business. And so in my 30s, I went from being a gifted, hardworking guy that could drive top line commissions to like, oh, okay, we've got to manage a P&L. Oh, we've got to manage people. Oh, making the wrong decision can cost you millions of dollars in net worth.
Yeah.
And so, the lessons of P&L management and being a businessman in my 30s.
Unbelievable. That's so good. Yeah. And unfortunately, most people learn that when they're 50. So definitely ahead of the curve, Dave. And I think you know that with everything that you know and see. All right. So now, man, you're like, got your mortgage companies, and then the big 4-0 hits. What did you say to yourself when you've accomplished a lot at 40. What was the self-talk? What was in your head? And what was the attitude lesson when you were 40?
Well, I'm not going to put 40, but in my 40s, that is where I made the shift from consumption to creation.
Cool.
I got really clear that I loved the technology business and SaaS companies like MortgageCoach. So
sure.
Super clear and on that. And then I got super clear where I started creating content. Over 11 years ago. So in my early 40s, 43 or whatever, I started doing interviews. I was also clear that everything, like I got a lot from authors. I got a lot from going to events and what happened on stage, but I got a lot from masterminding with my peers.
Cool.
And so kind of the combination of getting clear on that and started like, okay, I'm going to start interviewing the best loan officers in the country. So I'm going to mastermind more consistently, and I'm going to record it, and I'm going to put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And
way ahead of your time.
Way
ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the creation. Getting more creative, more clear, and posting it in shareable digital platforms.
Yeah. Whether you know it or not, I think I found the title for our podcast here with Dave, and it's going to be Bridging the Gap, Consumption, Creation, Clarity. How to bridge the gap, the 3 C's, man. That's great. All right. So, hey, bro, you're 55. 5 years ago, you turned 50. Your kids are getting older. They're in high school. You got guys going to college. It's an amazing age. I'm 51. And, man, when you get to the other side of 50, you really start thinking about things and seeing things differently. And so I'd love to know the Dave Savage who you've become now, the attitude lesson for your present, or the attitude lesson that if you remember your 50th birthday or when you took it, what was that, and what's that mentality today, and what would you like to share with our gappers about where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm at that age now where I'm realizing, that your body, your mind is your greatest asset. And
yes.
And things where, my natural energy, wasn't what it was in my 40s. Although I still show up the same throughout the day. I wear glasses now. Yeah. I did not wear glasses in my 40s. And, seeing my eyes, delete. So I definitely do not take my health for granted as I did before. And so make sure I get my sleep. One of my biggest goals for, we're in 2020 is more meditation. That's always been one of those things that
cool.
I do it. And when I do it, I get rewarded.
Yes.
But then I fall off the wagon. And so, working on my mind and my meditation and just focusing on myself, my physical and my mental health. I hope, if you interview me, in my 60s, I will have crushed it, and I will really taken my personal health, both mentally and physically, to a new level.
That's awesome, and I hope that when you turn 60, maybe we'll get you back on the Gap so we can see what your 60 attitude lesson is. Well, Dave, it's been an honor to speak with you. I consider you a friend and a mentor to me. I know I've learned a lot from you. It's so great to have you on this podcast. I think you have dropped some bombs and a lot of great nuggets for us when it comes to attitude. I think this concept of love, I think this concept of creation, the concept of gaining clarity, the concept that you know what, you got to move through life and not take things necessarily so seriously. You seem to just go with the flow, and you always seem in control. And certainly your example of being a pioneer in this age of video is inspiring to us. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Please tell us one last thing for our gappers that you'd like to share.
Well, there is one more thing I am really working on. There's this company called Super Nice, the Super Nice Club. And I always thought super nice just meant being nice to people. And I'm always nice to people. But one thing I'm also working on this year is just slowing down a little bit with relationships, because I walk fast. I'm ADD, and just slowing down, being a little more present with the people that matter. And then I'm not wearing it today, but I got to wear your attitude shirt.
Yes,
but I've
please.
been wearing this Super Nice Club shirt.
Nice.
And it's been firing me up. So be super nice. I heard you mention that earlier.
Cool. That's attitude booster.
Yeah, that would be a big takeaway.
Yeah, attitude booster number 1. Be nice. We got 4 episodes on being nice on the Gap. So I think that's a great call out from attitude booster number 1 to attitude booster number 10. This is Dave Savage. This guy understands how to do more than you're paid for. Dave, God bless you, and thank you so much for being on the Gap.